The grand, imposing gates of the Sterling estate whispered tales of untold wealth, a fortress of prosperity nestled amidst manicured lawns and ancient oak trees. Inside, however, within the cold, polished marble halls resided a different kind of story, one of silence, of distance, and of a father's profound, if often unspoken, heartache. Mr. Alastair Sterling, a titan of industry, a man whose decisions swayed markets and whose empire stretched across continents, found himself utterly powerless within the confines of his own home, particularly when it came to his 7-year-old daughter, Emily. Emily. Her name itself was a delicate whisper, a stark contrast to the boisterous world Alastair inhabited. She was a child of luminous eyes and an inquisitive spirit, trapped within a world of profound quiet. Emily was deaf, not partially, not hearing impaired, but profoundly deaf from birth. It was a reality that had shattered Alastair's meticulously constructed world, a challenge he, with all his resources and intellect, had failed to conquer. He had poured millions into specialists, therapists, experimental treatments, the most cutting-edge hearing aids, cochlear implants, all met with the same heartbreaking stillness. The silence that enveloped Emily also, in a way, enveloped their relationship, creating a chasm that Alastair, despite his vast power, could not bridge. His office, a sanctuary of mahogany and leather, offered him a retreat from the emotional complexities of his life. Here, numbers made sense, strategies yielded predictable outcomes, and control was an absolute. But Emily was an enigma, a beautiful, vibrant soul he couldn't reach. He loved her fiercely, unequivocally, but his love was tinged with a deep-seated frustration, a sense of inadequacy that gnawed at him. He saw her struggles, her moments of quiet despair when she couldn't understand what others were communicating, the way she would sometimes withdraw into herself, creating her own silent world. He saw it, and it broke him, but he didn't know how to fix it. He had tried, oh how he had tried. The best sign language instructors had come and gone, their enthusiasm slowly dimming under Emily's quiet resistance, or perhaps under Alastair's own unspoken resignation. He had come to accept, with a heavy heart, that Emily would likely never speak, that her world would forever be one of visual cues and tactile sensations, a world he could only ever observe from a distance. His wife, Emily's mother, had left years ago, unable to cope with the demands of their life, the constant pressure, and perhaps most acutely, the silent challenge of raising a deaf child. Her departure had only solidified Alastair's belief that he was alone in this battle, a solitary figure navigating a landscape of profound emotional difficulty. He compensated with more work, with more wealth, believing that providing Emily with every material comfort, every opportunity, was the truest expression of his love, even if he couldn't give her the one thing he desperately wished for, a voice, and with it, a bridge to his own world. Into this meticulously ordered, yet emotionally desolate world, stepped Maria. She was hired through the estate manager, a woman of quiet demeanor and unassuming grace. Her references were impeccable, her experience in managing large households extensive. Alastair barely registered her presence beyond a cursory nod during her initial introduction. He had a retinue of staff, chefs, chauffeurs, gardeners, security personnel, each fulfilling a specific function, maintaining the intricate machinery of his opulent life. Maria was just another cog, albeit an important one, in that well-oiled machine. Her primary duties revolved around the upkeep of the vast mansion, ensuring its pristine condition, managing the other domestic staff, and generally ensuring the smooth operation of the household. Maria, however, was not just another cog. She possessed an innate sensitivity, an almost intuitive understanding of the unspoken currents that flowed beneath the surface of the Sterling estate. She noticed things others didn't. She noticed the way Emily's eyes would follow the movements of people talking, a silent plea for understanding. She noticed the fleeting shadows of loneliness that crossed Emily's face when she thought no one was watching. And she noticed Alistair's own guarded sorrow, a man burdened with immense responsibility and a profound personal grief.
Maria had a story of her own, a life lived far from the gilded cages of wealth. She had grown up in a small, close-knit community where empathy was not a luxury but a necessity. She had a younger sister who, for a time, had struggled with a severe speech impediment, a challenge that had taught Maria patience, perseverance, and the profound power of nonverbal communication. She remembered the frustration, the tears, the sheer effort it took for her sister to articulate even the simplest word, and the immense joy when a breakthrough finally occurred. These experiences had instilled in Maria a deep wellspring of compassion for those who faced communication barriers. From her first day, Maria observed Emily with a gentle, unobtrusive gaze. She saw beyond the label of deaf child and recognized a bright, curious, and deeply feeling individual. Emily often retreated to her own world, drawing in her vast, sunlit playroom, or reading books with colorful illustrations, her fingers tracing the images, her imagination filling in the silent narratives. Maria would often find herself drawn to Emily's presence, not as part of her duty, but by a quiet, almost magnetic pull. She would watch Emily play, sometimes leaving a small, thoughtful gift, a particularly vibrant crayon, a smooth, interesting pebble found in the garden, a flower from the conservatory. These were small, silent gestures, offerings of connection that required no words. Emily, initially wary of new faces, slowly began to respond to Maria's gentle approach. Unlike the parade of therapists who often approached her with an air of professional detachment, Maria offered warmth, a genuine smile, and an unhurried presence. There was no pressure, no expectation, just a quiet acceptance. Maria didn't try to fix Emily, she simply acknowledged her, saw her. And in that acknowledgement, a fragile seed of trust began to sprout. One afternoon, Maria was dusting the vast library, a room Emily often frequented. Emily was sitting on the plush carpet, surrounded by picture books, her brow furrowed in concentration. She picked up a book about animals and pointed to a vibrant illustration of a lion. She looked at Maria, her eyes wide, a question in their depths. Maria, without thinking, made a soft roar sound, exaggerating the mouth movements, her hams mimicking paws. Emily's eyes lit up. She copied the hand movement, a small, tentative smile playing on her lips. It was a tiny moment, easily missed, but for Maria, it was a profound connection. It was a shared understanding, a glimmer of communication beyond the spoken word. This small interaction sparked something within Maria. She began to spend more time, discreetly, with Emily. During her breaks or after her official duties, she would seek out Emily. She started with simple games, visual puzzles, drawing together. She noticed Emily's fascination with mouths, the way she would intently watch lips move, even if the sounds remained elusive. It was a natural curiosity, a child's inherent drive to understand the world around her. Maria remembered her sister's struggles, the way they had used tactile cues, visual aids, and exaggerated mouth movements. She recalled how important it was to make the act of communication playful, engaging, not a chore. She began to experiment. She would hold up an apple, clearly enunciate, apple, letting Emily feel the vibration in her throat, letting her see the shape her lips formed. She would then encourage Emily to touch her own throat, to mimic the lip shape. There was no pressure, just gentle encouragement, a patient repetition. Emily would often just watch, sometimes mimic the lip shape silently, sometimes giggle at Maria's exaggerated expressions. Alistair, immersed in his corporate world, remained largely oblivious to these subtle shifts. He saw Maria as an efficient housekeeper, nothing more. He might occasionally glimpse Maria and Emily together in the garden, Maria pointing out a flower, Emily nodding. He would interpret it as Maria simply being kind, doing a little extra to engage the child, a commendable trait in an employee. He wouldn't have dared to imagine the depth of the interaction, the quiet, revolutionary work taking place under his very roof. He had, after all, hired the best professionals, and they had all concluded that spoken language was largely an impossibility for Emily. He had accepted that verdict. However, Maria refused to accept it. She believed in Emily, in the inherent human capacity for connection and expression. She knew the journey would be arduous, fraught with setbacks and frustrations, but she also knew the immense reward that lay at the end. She began to research in her limited free time, borrowing books from the local library on teaching speech to deaf children, devouring articles online. She learned about different phonetic techniques, about the importance of tactile stimulation, about the power of visual cues and consistent reinforcement. She wasn't a trained specialist, but she possessed something far more potent, an unwavering belief in Emily, and a heart full of compassion.
Her methods were unconventional, born of intuition and necessity. She would use mirrors, showing Emily her own mouth movements as she tried to form sounds. She would place Emily's hand on her own throat, letting her feel the rumble of her voice, then gently guide Emily's hand to her own throat, encouraging her to try. She started with simple sounds. For mother, even though Maria knew Emily rarely saw her own mother. Ah, for open. P for puff. She made it a game, a secret shared adventure between them. Emily, at first, was hesitant. The world of sound was alien to her, an abstract concept she couldn't grasp. The effort required to force her vocal cords to vibrate, to shape her mouth into unfamiliar configurations was immense. There were days of frustration, moments when she would simply turn away, her small shoulders slumped in defeat. Maria never pushed. She would simply offer a comforting hug, a reassuring smile, and then gently redirect Emily to another activity, always returning to the speech exercises with renewed patience and a fresh approach. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, Emily began to make progress. The first sound was an accidental when she was reaching for a piece of fruit. Maria nearly dropped the basket. Her heart leapt. She didn't make a big deal of it, just smiled, repeated the sound, and offered Emily the fruit. The next day, Emily made the sound again, this time with a hint of intention. Maria started to associate sounds with objects, with actions, building a small vocabulary, brick by painstaking brick. Ball was a round object they would roll. Drink was a cup of juice. Up was when Maria lifted her. The process was agonizingly slow, demanding an extraordinary level of dedication from Maria and immense perseverance from Emily. Each new sound, each half-formed word was a monumental victory. Maria would meticulously write down Emily's progress, tiny notes hidden in her personal diary, a testament to their shared journey. She knew the risk she was taking. If Alistair found out, he might be angry, might view her actions as overstepping her boundaries, interfering with his daughter's life in a way he hadn't authorized. But Maria couldn't stop. She saw the spark in Emily's eyes, the growing eagerness, the burgeoning hope. She was giving Emily a tool, a bridge, a way to connect with the world, and that was a calling she could not ignore. Emily's world began to expand. With each new sound, each new word, a tiny curtain lifted. She started to associate the tactile sensation of her own vocal cords vibrating with the visual cues of Maria's lips and the meaning of the word. It was a complex neurological dance, a rewiring of pathways that had long lain dormant. The silence that had once been her constant companion began to be punctuated by small, tentative sounds. They were not perfect, not clear, but they were there. They were hers. Alistair, during this period, was consumed by a particularly demanding business venture. His days stretched into nights, his mind a whirlwind of mergers, acquisitions, and market analyses. He saw Emily during brief, rushed encounters, usually at dinner or for a quick goodnight kiss. He would ask her about her day, and she would respond with sign language or with a nod,
her eyes full of expression, but her voice silent. He noticed a change, a subtle brightening in her demeanor, a greater willingness to engage, but he attributed it to her growing up, perhaps to the continuity of having Maria as a stable presence in the house. He never suspected the true catalyst behind this transformation. One evening, Alistair returned home earlier than expected. A deal had closed, and for the first time in weeks, he felt a lightness in his step, a desire to unwind. He walked through the quiet halls, the echoing silence of familiar companion. He was heading towards his study when he heard it, a faint, almost imperceptible sound coming from Emily's playroom. It was not the usual silent rustling of toys or the soft thump of a book. It was a sound that made him pause, a sound that sent a ripple of unease, then curiosity through him. He approached the playroom door, which was slightly ajar. He pushed it open just enough to peer inside. What he saw froze him in his tracks. Maria was sitting on the floor with Emily, a brightly colored picture book open between them. Maria was pointing to an image of a red car. Her lips were moving slowly, deliberately, enunciating the word car. Emily was watching her intently, her small hand pressed against Maria's throat. Then Emily's own lips began to move, clumsily at first, then with more purpose. A small guttural sound escaped her, a sound that resonated deep within Alistair's chest, rattling the foundations of his long-held beliefs. "K-ar," Emily whispered, her voice rough, unpracticed, but undeniably present. Maria's face lit up with a joyous smile. She hugged Emily, praising her softly, her eyes brimming with pride. "Yes, Emily, car, very good," she encouraged. Alistair stood there, rooted to the spot, a silent observer to a miracle unfolding before his eyes. His breath caught in his throat. He felt a surge of emotion so powerful, so overwhelming that he almost collapsed against the doorframe. Disbelief, shock, a flicker of anger. Anger that this had been happening without his knowledge, anger that he had been excluded from such a profound moment. But overriding all of it was an incandescent wave of hope, a joy so intense it brought tears to his eyes. Emily, his Emily, speaking.
He watched for another moment, mesmerized. Maria then pointed to a picture of a dog. "Dog," she articulated clearly. Emily watched, concentrated, her brow furrowed with effort. "D-o-g," she attempted, her voice still raw, but the intention was clear, the sound discernible. Alistair couldn't hold back any longer. He pushed the door open fully, the sound echoing slightly in the quiet room. Maria and Emily looked up, startled. Maria's eyes widened in alarm, a flash of fear crossing her face. Emily, seeing her father, smiled shyly. Alistair walked into the room, his gaze fixed on Maria, then on Emily. He knelt down, his voice thick with emotion. "Emily," he managed, his voice barely a whisper. Can you say, Papa?" Emily looked at Maria, then back at her father. She placed her hand on her own throat, then on Alistair's, as Maria had taught her. She watched his lips, then formed her own. "Pa," she struggled, the sound almost lost, but it was there, a nascent attempt at his name. Tears streamed down Alistair's face, unbidden, unstoppable. He scooped Emily into his arms, holding her tightly, something he hadn't done with such raw, unrestrained emotion in years. He buried his face in her hair, murmuring incoherent words of love and wonder. He pulled back, looking at Maria, his eyes red-rimmed but full of an emotion she couldn't quite decipher. Fear still lingered in her heart. Had she overstepped? Was she about to be reprimanded, or worse, dismissed? "Maria," Alistair said, his voice hoarse, What have you been doing?"
The question wasn't accusatory. It was filled with a bewildered awe. Maria, regaining her composure, explained, her voice soft but firm. "Mr. Sterling, I saw Emily's desire to communicate. I remembered my sister's struggles, and I thought I could try. It was never my intention to go against your wishes, but I couldn't stand by and not try to help her find her voice." She explained her methods, her research, the slow, painstaking progress. She spoke of Emily's remarkable perseverance, her intelligence, her innate drive to connect. Alistair listened, every word a revelation. He felt a profound shame wash over him. While he had been consumed by his empire, convinced that Emily's silence was an unchangeable reality, this quiet, unassuming woman had been working a miracle. He had provided all the resources, but Maria had provided the one thing he had lacked: unwavering belief and tireless, empathetic dedication. "Maria," he said, his voice trembling, I don't know what to say. I had given up hope. I believed it was impossible." He looked at Emily, who was now watching them, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, a small smile playing on her lips. "You've given her a gift, Maria. A gift beyond measure. You've given her a voice." The ensuing days and weeks were transformative for the Sterling household. Alistair, once distant and absorbed, became a different man. He spent more time with Emily, learning the techniques Maria had employed, marveling at his daughter's progress. He would sit with them, patiently repeating words, feeling the vibrations in his own throat, guiding Emily's hand. He saw the world through Emily's eyes, experienced the sheer effort she put into each sound, each word. And with each tiny victory, his bond with Emily deepened, strengthened by shared effort and burgeoning communication. Emily's vocabulary grew, slowly but steadily. Her voice, though still rough and requiring immense effort, became clearer, more intentional. She began to connect simple words, forming short phrases, expressing her needs, her desires, her thoughts. The silent chasm between father and daughter began to close, replaced by a bridge built of sounds and shared understanding. Alistair made sure Maria was properly recognized and compensated. He offered her a new role, one focused entirely on Emily's development, with all the resources and support she could possibly need. Maria, true to her nature, humbly accepted, her greatest reward being Emily's growing confidence and joyous expressions. The story of Alistair Sterling, Emily, and Maria became a quiet legend within their circle, a testament to the power of human connection, of seeing beyond labels, and of the extraordinary impact one compassionate individual can have. It challenged Alistair's preconceived notions about wealth, about expertise, about what was truly possible. He learned that the greatest treasures were not found in boardrooms or financial statements, but in the quiet, persistent efforts of a dedicated heart, in the breakthrough sound of a child's voice, and in the profound, transformative power of empathy.
The house, once filled with a luxurious silence, now echoed with the tentative, beautiful sounds of Emily's growing voice, a melody of hope and triumph, carefully orchestrated by a woman who chose to believe when others had given up. And Alistair, the millionaire who once felt powerless, found his greatest strength not in his empire, but in the simple, profound act of listening to his daughter. Truly listening, for the very first time. He learned that true wealth wasn't just about what you possessed, but about the connections you forged, the lives you touched, and the silent miracles you allowed to unfold. He understood, finally, that he had been given a second chance, a chance to truly connect with his daughter, And it was all thanks to the quiet perseverance and profound compassion of a woman who saw a child, not a challenge, and chose to believe in the impossible. The journey was far from over, but now Emily had a voice, and Alistair, for the first time, knew how to truly listen. If this story touched your heart and reminded you of the incredible power of compassion and dedication, please consider subscribing to our channel. Your support helps us share more stories of hope and inspiration, celebrating the triumphs of children and individuals facing unique challenges. Thank you for watching.